So yeah, Maura, that was some great advice on the last one. We were talking about time block planning and about sort of interruptions and responsiveness to email and instant messaging. And both of those things are big topics with the author Cal Newport, who I'm sure you're familiar with. You can see a book behind you there. So he wrote Deep Work. A lot of people know him for that book. More recently, came out with A World Without Email. I'm not sure, have you read it yet? But what do you feel about the role of email and instant messaging in our workplaces when it comes to productivity?
Well, I suppose you can look at it in two different ways. I mean, email and instant messaging is such a fantastically productive tools. It's transformed our lives. Also, the fact that we can do our email now on devices, etc. You can be standing in the queue waiting for your coffee in the morning, and you can get through 2 or 3 emails. It's unbelievably productive. The challenge is to control your email rather than have your email control you. And that is really the challenge, because the volumes of email and messaging and everything to do with Teams and all our online collaborative tools now, all of them really bring notifications and messaging. The challenge is to deal with the volume. And of course, any tool that we use, the notifications for message arrival, the notifications are by default all switched on. So every new piece of technology that you incorporate into your work life, while it helps you be productive, it also brings notifications and alerts. And of course, that brings distraction. And linking in with Cal Newport, his whole idea of deep work. I mean, I love that expression, that idea of, getting into a concentrated state where you can do really deep, valuable work. His whole message, I suppose, is that if you have lots of distractions throughout the day, you'll never really get into that deep thinking mode. So a lot of his discussion is around how to reduce those distractions. And that's really important. So it is important to be aware of the impact of those distractions on your ability to focus and to get that deep thinking work done. You have to balance it with, though, the fact that, for some people, it's really impossible to switch off those notifications, to not be responsive to their email. I've worked with some people who get 120 emails a day. I work with people in roles that their job is to be reactive. So say someone who's a PA to a CEO in an organization, she has to respond instantly to every message that she gets, well, nearly every message. So while the thinking is great in Cal's book, and it can be really good to read books by people like Cal Newport, I think he's a university lecturer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin.
Right there,
so it's great.
Can't remember which university.
Yeah, in America. So that it is fantastic that people like him have time to think about these topics and do the research and come up with good strategies, and then we can kind of learn from that and modify them. But I feel, my feeling when I read Deep Work was that while it's great and it all makes sense, if you're in an environment where you're a university lecturer, it's probably not very stressful. You're probably the master of your own destiny. So it might be easier to do some of the things that he suggests. And sometimes I feel that if people pick up a book like that, they then feel under pressure to do it themselves. And then if they can't, or as you said earlier, if you try something and then you can't stick to it, people then, that's really demotivating. And there's a lot of busy, stressful work environments where it just wouldn't be possible to be maybe tuning out of email for blocks of time throughout the day, because people would be so stressed that they weren't responding to their email, but also, there'd be an expectation and it wouldn't be acceptable that they weren't responding. So I try and take the concepts in a book like Cal's and then give people a practical version of it that they can then tweak to their environment. So it is, I suppose, around with email, looking at ways to manage that volume. Somebody gets 120 emails a day, like that would be your entire day. You would not really be able to get anything else done. And of course, email is how we do our job as well. So we have to spend a significant amount of time in it. One of the things is to try and distinguish between the important emails and then the ones that are lower priority that you actually can leave and respond to at a later point, or even just leave them there until you need them. And, I find things like the follow-up flag is fantastic. So when I'm checking my email, I always use the follow-up flag for things that are going to take longer.
It's with Outlook specifically, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but there's
I think Google equipments and
Star and Gmail.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I sort my inbox by those follow-up flags. And then when I come back to do an email time block for an hour or two to process my email, then I have my inbox sorted by the ones I need to follow up on. So for me with email, what I advise people to do is think of your interaction with it. Are you checking your email or are you processing your email? And very often we do the two together and then we kind of don't do either properly. So I kind of try and have, numerous checks throughout the day, as many as I need to stay in touch. But when I check, I just do very quick responses, things that take up to 2 minutes. But anything that's going to take longer than that, unless it's very urgent. If it's not very urgent, I'll flag it for follow-up. And then I'll have email blocks throughout the day where, say, for an hour, I do all my processing. So I go straight in and do all the ones flagged for follow-up, clear them down. And then, if people have a high volume, they can do numerous time blocks throughout the day to do that processing. Then check it as frequently as you need to be responsive, So, but it means that in between those times, you may have the potential to close out of it and do other things. So I think it's looking at your interaction so that it's not just constantly interacting with email, because then email is driving your day. Yeah. And it's impossible to get that protected time to get other things done, like the deep work that Cal mentioned.